Thank you, everybody. We're going to get started since we're just a teeny bit late. We're really happy to have these three really impactful, wonderful women speaking to us tonight. We've got Karen McCandless. She's the Executive Director of Community Action Services and Food Bank. She's also served as a City Councilwoman in Orem for 13 years and is City Planner in Mapleton for 3 years. She's also worked as an interim Community Development Director in Mapleton and has economic and community development consulting experience as well. And then we have Ashley Hoops, the Executive Director, at Circles Salt Lake. She works with disadvantaged populations, especially homeless and parents and children, as well as those experiencing trauma. She works for marginalized populations to increase their access to political systems in an effective way. And then lastly, we have Jen Nibley, who's the director of Arrive Utah. She's worked in both regional and statewide nonprofits for more than 18 years, including 10 years with Community Action Services and Provo Food Bank. So join me in welcoming these women.
Thank you. I've got the easy job tonight, and that is to be the facilitator, moderator, the person who doesn't have a PowerPoint to do tonight. So welcome. Glad you're here to learn and talk about and discuss a very important topic in our community, one that we don't always know about. What I'd like to do is give you a little information, a little background information about what's going on in Utah County regarding poverty and homelessness, and then tell you the format of how we're going to be proceeding this evening. First, I'm going to start with a story. This happened as I was leaving work to come do this tonight. There was a gentleman in our parking lot at Community Action by the Provo Front Runner Station. I don't know, do you all know where we're at? Okay. Provo Front Runner Station, and he had like those storage containers, black storage containers with the yellow lids, the Snap-on. He had them in the parking lot. There were 3 of them, I think. And then he had a smaller one. Then he had a pair of insulated coveralls. He also had a couple of the half-gallon or gallon juice containers full of water. He had a hand truck, and he was standing out in the parking lot just eating. He had about 3 coats on. He looked massive because he had so many coats on. And I watched him as he was out there. He very organized. He put his containers back together on the hand truck and put straps around them and put the bungee cords on it. And I went out and visited with him. And he said that he was passing through. I said, "Are you from around here?" He said, "No, I'm passing through. I've been hiking in California, and I have been camping at Diamond Fork, and then it started snowing, and I'm going to head home to Massachusetts." He says, "I'm trying to get back to Massachusetts where I have family, and I haven't been there in 9 years." And many of the clients we have are passing through, and the way that they live, it is camping and hiking, but I could tell by his accent that he was from Massachusetts. Those of you who are familiar with Massachusetts, he had that, even though he had been out of Massachusetts for that period of time and had been living and hiking around in California. So he wanted some directions to the Greyhound station, and so I gave those to him, and he put this big piece of wood on his hand truck so he could put his containers up and strap them up. And then, I don't know, he was still there, I think, when you left, Jen, and I imagine he's on his way now. But homelessness and poverty are very real issues here in Utah County and in our state. In Utah County, according to a report that you can get online, which is the annual report on poverty in Utah, you can go to caputah.org. Our county poverty rate in 2016 was 13.2%. And that equates to over 71,000 individuals in poverty, with nearly 23,000 children in poverty. And about 5.5% of all individuals over the age of 65 are in poverty as well. And so we do have this issue in our community. We also have homelessness as an issue as well. We have no shelter here in Provo, in the Provo-Orem area, or anywhere in Utah County. So we are needing, and what we do is we give emergency shelter services through budget motels located near our facility in Provo. Right now in the housing inventory in the 2000s, this is another publication you can pick up online, Comprehensive Report on Homelessness 2016. There were 166 emergency shelter beds in Utah County, 103 rapid rehousing units, 91 emergency shelter units, and 72 transitional housing units. So you total that up, that's to maybe under 400 units for the homeless that we have here in Utah County in some form, whether it's transitional housing to emergency shelter. So what I've done today is I've invited Jen Nibley and Ashley Hoops to come and speak about these two issues, because poverty and homelessness are very different issues, yet they're related, they're interrelated. So what they're going to do is Jen's going to take a few minutes talking about what poverty is. And then Ashley's going to talk about what homelessness looks like. And then after that, I'll come back up and we're going to have some questions I have some questions and we'll discuss them. And if you have questions, please make a note of them and we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions as well. So Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
It's so good to see you. So we're going to talk a little bit about poverty. Oftentimes, I've noticed over the years working in this field that when you say poverty, you think of homeless. You think of the person out on the street who's living out of bags, who's under bridges. And the reality is poverty is so much more encompassing than just that vision. Yeah, I'm short. You could say that too. Okay, no, I'm totally good. Is that better? Oh, you scared me. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what poverty is and how to define it. Oftentimes here in the U.S., we define it by money, right? So there's the federal poverty guidelines, and it's based on how much your income is for your household and how many people are living in that household. The thing is with the federal poverty guideline is it was created in the 60s, and at the time they thought, what's the best way to figure this out? They decided, let's see how much a family of four, for instance, spends on food. Most people spend 1/3 of their income on food, so we'll times it by 3. That will be our level. Now I want you to think of your own personal budget. Perhaps you spend 1/3 of your income on food, but there's so many more things in our day today that takes up our budget. That's not food. So in the meantime, they've slowly adjusted that, and oftentimes they will try to accommodate that by making like SNAP or other public assistance programs eligible up to 138% instead of just 100%. So when you hear even statistics about poverty and it says there's this many people in poverty in your area, it's good to do a little digging. Like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about a family of four making less than $18,000? Okay, that's interesting, but it could also be, is it somebody making half of the median income, and now we're talking about $35,000, and it doesn't matter about household so much. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And so this here is according to the federal poverty guideline, which I just told you about. A family of four, it says making less than $28,000 about a year is considered in poverty. But for a living wage here in Utah, you have to make between $50,000 and $80,000 for a family of four. It depends on how that household is made up. If it's 2 parents, 2 kids, and one of them staying home taking care of the kids, you can probably do the $50,000. If you need daycare or childcare at all, you need more than that. If you have a single parent that has 3 kids and they all need daycare while the parent's at work, you're closer to that $79,000. This is living wage calculator through MIT. To afford, even if we don't look at your household income, say you want to rent a 2-bedroom unit, fair market value average across the state of Utah, you would have to make $37,000 a year to be in that affordable housing bracket. That means you're paying only 1/3 of your income on housing. That's over $19 an hour full-time work for that individual. So you start looking at the wages we have, how many people are working, how you're supporting family. We have, for affordable units in the state, and I'm not touching on this at all, so, but we're short over almost 50,000 units. We're about 48,000 short. So in Utah, as of a couple years ago, for every 100 families that were kind of low income, and for Provo-Orem area, we're talking half of the median wage, which is 65,000. So for every 100 families that make $36,000 or less, there's only 64 units available. Good luck to the rest of you, right? So we have challenges. It is here. What I'd like to propose to you, though, and what we've seen over the years, it's not really about money only. We can hand two families a large sum of money and send them off, and one might thrive and be done with poverty, and the other might be right back there pretty quickly. It's not only about poverty. So we talk about money, so we talk about poverty as a lack of resources. And this is the list of resources that we talk about. And to give you just a little bit of an idea, think of emotional resources, your emotional ability to deal with challenges. Some of you in here, how many of you have more than one sibling in your family? Like multiple siblings? Okay, good. So if you have multiple siblings, let's think of a very challenging situation, right? We hand the same challenge to two of your siblings. Does one do better than the other, typically? Yeah, right? It matters. Our emotional way to deal with challenges matters. It's one of our resources. So that's one of the things that we could do. Physically, how many of you have ever had a cast on and it limited the way that you can physically move about? Did you notice a difference in what you could handle and do? Oftentimes, physical disabilities that limit mobility will put individuals into poverty. Okay, so there's resources and lack of resources. And if you look through this, we could go through lots of them. We do trainings called Bridges Out of Poverty. If you're ever interested in that, arriveutah.org. Send us a little email. We'll talk about, you can come to those trainings, and we go more in detail on that. So I don't have time right now, but so the hidden rules that we mention up here, that's basically social rules. And it talks about how when you're with groups of people, you learn certain social rules that are acceptable. And you probably would recognize this as if you've ever gone into a room and started to notice, I'm different and I feel really uncomfortable with this group of people. We actually have social rules that follow our economic class lines, whether you're in poverty, low income, middle class, or upper class and wealth. So we go more into that. So that's one thing to be aware of, that oftentimes we think we're going to solve poverty by helping people get jobs to make more money. As the previous slide shown, yeah, we do need people to make more money. How are you going to pay for basic needs if we don't have more money and more affordable options for you? Yet at the same time, it's not the only thing. Poverty can be complex. And so sometimes we shy away from it because we're like, oh, we start getting so overwhelmed. We might shy away from it when the reality is all of us together can do really awesome things. Another thing here is we talk about the way that problems affect us. And just a quick example would be a flat tire. So if you're middle class, you can meet your basic needs. You hopefully have a little savings because you've done that. But even without that, you can meet your basic needs. You're on your way to work, you get a flat tire. You're on the side of the freeway and you're not excited about that, right? It's a bad day, it's a bad morning. You call work, you call people. Hopefully, maybe you have AAA, right? They show up and they can help you out. It was a bad day. It was a bump in the road, and you tell everyone, oh, guess what happened to me? How horrible. I got this flat tire on the freeway, and it's the big story for the week, but you move on, and life's okay. That same thing for a low-income individual, flat tire on the side. Probably don't have AAA. You can get it fixed. Hopefully you can fix it yourself, but if for some reason you can't change, I hate to say this, I like to think I'm a strong woman, but I cannot move those lug nuts. Even if I know the concept, it just doesn't move with my arm strength. But maybe somebody helps you, hopefully you have a spare. But if you don't have a spare and you wait for that, you're late for work. How often do they have work that you can just be late for regularly? If it's the third time, you lose your job. If you lose your job, you can't pay for your daycare. And I work so hard to get that affordable daycare. It's really hard, but they need money. So while I'm looking for that and I can't pay them, they find somebody else. I find a new job, but now I don't have daycare, so then I can't go to work. And so the two things I have up here is that pie. The pie is always better than the spider web. Not always, but typically. But the pie is in middle class. That flat tire is very segmented. It is a problem, right? It was frustrating. It was hard to get over, and it was a bad day. But it was segmented. It didn't affect everything else in my life. It was, okay, but I had resources to deal with it. Low income's more like a spider web and you tug. What do you think happens when you tug? It all falls down. And to deal on that on an ongoing basis, that crisis after crisis, is very exhausting. And it's hard for someone to understand, why don't you just do what I do and you'll be okay? I was like, well, in your world, in your environment, in that situation, that's true, but it doesn't work for mine. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we look at individuals and we think about how can we help those in poverty, or if we've been there ourselves, how can we, affect this issue in such a way that we can move forward and make it less impactful in a negative way. We're going to talk about generational poverty for a minute. So we have situational and generational. What do you I'll repeat it in the mic. But what do you think situational, when I say situational poverty, what might that be? Healthcare crisis, yep. Loss of a job.
Being a university student.
Being a student, yes. College student.
Fire or something.
Yeah. A fire, a natural disaster perhaps, right? So there are situations that will put you into poverty, and hopefully that's limited and you move forward. Generational typically is 2 generations or more. You grew up in poverty, you're now a parent, and your children are in poverty. It's very sticky. You get in that situation and it gets sticky because of these things I've listed up there. You learn skills of how to survive in that crisis mode, on how to survive in not having enough. Right? So your survival focus, not future focus, go to school, go to college, get this big degree and move on. I have to figure out where my food's coming from. If I don't have food today, I don't really care about 7 years of school to get forward, right? It's very challenging to do that. Then you have those social rules. You start hanging out with other individuals in those crisis situations or the low income. You get along really well, but if you've noticed, you can go to different economic class environments and events, and you start feeling uncomfortable. So you really get in this group, but it's hard to bridge relationships with others outside of that group because you start feeling like an outsider. Therefore, you start having your social group get to be other individuals that are also in limited situation, poverty, limited resources. They're great help, but is limited, right? And then you have that chronic stress and trauma. There's been a lot of study and research that shows chronic poverty is similar brain scans to those in natural disasters and war-torn countries. And you think about it, how often are we more kind to refugees than just low-income individuals? But they're dealing with the same mental bandwidth to deal with challenges and problems oftentimes. So there's a lot of things that we look at. And one thing, the reason why this matters is this down here from UC Davis, the poverty research there. It says increased time spent in poverty is associated with lower chances of moving out. 1 year in poverty, you have a 56% chance of most likely getting out, right? 7 years, 13%. And what you see is you get individuals and kids in poverty, and we think, let's just help the low-income kids. Let's do programs for them alone. But if we don't get their household out of poverty, they grow up in poverty. And from this statistic, most likely, they will be adults in poverty. And it's sad to me that as they turn 18, we wanted to help them when they were kids. They're kids, they're innocent, let's help them. And then they turn 18, and we're like, you should know how to do this. You should know how to be successful, right? And even middle-class individuals, I mean, there's plenty, right, in their 20s that go back and mom and dad are helping you out and they're trying to help you figure out life. But we expect when you're an adult, you should be able to do this. And we sometimes get harsh in our judgment. But the reality is a lot of those in poverty as adults grew up in poverty, right, with those situations we saw. Let's look at why this matters in Utah. Total number of children in generational poverty in Utah will fill the Vivint Smart Home Arena 3 times. And we just talked about that chain, right? That's almost 60,000 kids. But this next one to me almost scares me more because they looked at not only generational poverty, but kids in poverty that are at risk of becoming the first generation of that next generation, right? And there's 29% of kids in Utah are at risk of being in poverty as an adult. 1 in 3. I mean, this is DWS looking at Utah stats and seeing what they've seen patterns of. This is what they're looking at right now. 1 in 10 Utahns currently live in poverty. So this matters when we look at that. One thing I found was fascinating. I was listening to Susan Madsen the other day, and she was talking about why is it, I'm just throwing this out there because I thought it was so interesting, about women being in elected, what is it? Positions, thank you. Because they asked different questions, and they found that the states that have more women in elected positions and legislatures have more money to solve family, economic, children things, because women will focus on and think about different things. So I'm just putting it out there. If any of you want to like rally behind that, I encourage you. And so we're going to talk about, there's a lot of complexity here, there's a lot going on, but the reality is alone you can feel it's overwhelming. But when we all come together and do a little, it's amazing what happens and what you will see. And so that's why after years in the field, I got involved with the Circles Initiative. Arrive Utah, we lead that. Ashley helps lead that. We have others in the room here, so if you want to ask them about it, there's 3 Circles sites here in Utah County alone that we work together as a whole community to help these families move forward. Now I'm going to turn the time over to Ashley. Okay.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me? I'm taller than Jen is. Okay, and I'm using her clicker. I am the most technologically challenged human under the age of 80 on the planet. So, okay, so first off, I just want to say that I'm gonna fly through some of these slides, but just when it comes to homelessness, so I want to really quickly let you know how I got into this. So I grew up in Orem and Provo. I went to Orem High. My siblings went to Timpview. And I did not see homeless people growing up here in Orem, in Provo. When I went to college here, it was UVCC, I got involved with the Food and Care Coalition in downtown Provo, and I started to see some homeless individuals. There was a family that was actually in my ward that I recognized that was getting services, but it wasn't an overnight shelter, it was a soup kitchen. And then I moved to Massachusetts and saw poverty at a really big, on a big scale, and moved back here to Salt Lake, to Utah. We were living in Salt Lake, and I was invited to go to the Road Home Homeless Shelter to do an activity for the kids that were living there. And have any of you guys been to the Road Home? Okay, so a few of you. And I was like blown away. I walked into their Midvale Family Shelter, and at this time it was the old shelter. They've now done a remodel and it's a lot better. But it was like cot to cot, just lined wall to wall with families, children crying. The smell was horrible. I mean, it was just like Superdome Katrina, or the Superdome after Hurricane Katrina. And you're just going, gosh, what country am I living in? Like, what year is this? And so I recognized once I saw that we had a real issue with homelessness in Utah, but maybe like you guys, it felt daunting. Like Jen was saying, it's like, I can't eat this elephant whole. I can't do this on my own. And so there's this knee-jerk reaction, I think. I don't know if you guys feel this way, but when I see something that overwhelms me, I just go into the fetal position. I'm like, that's my solution. I'll just eat a carton of ice cream and just take a nap, because that solves things. But it doesn't. So I'm gonna go through that and get to this one. So can I take this out? Ew. Okay. So, and this slide is a little bit dated. This is from the 2014 to 2015 school district, Salt Lake School District records, but you can see that there were 3.81% of the students were considered homeless in the Salt Lake School District, so that you've got 950 homeless school-age students, and that excludes preschool-age children. They don't count the kids that haven't gotten to kindergarten yet. And that's shocking, right? I mean, because I wasn't seeing that many kids at the Salt Lake shelter. I mean, there were a lot of kids, but there were not 950 kids. And so we understand that the reason why we don't see those kids is because they're often doubled up, staying at a friend's home. Some of them are camping, some of them are living in cars, some are living in motels, some are living with, family member, but they're all considered technically homeless with the McKinney-Vento federal program, and so that's how they've been identified. When it comes to missing school, and so I was a young mom when I got into this. I would like to think of myself still as a young mom. I'm not quite so young, but I had these like tiny little kids, and I decided to create a preschool program for the shelter downtown, because the idea of myself not having 1 minute of help, I just was like sick to my stomach over it. I had a mother who was like the world's best grandmother who would help me. I had friends, siblings. I had a little like joy school that my friends and I would run. We had, what's that little place where they go and they like jump around, and little gym or something, Yeah, I mean, or that, grandma's house. But here these families were at the shelter, and because the kids weren't in school, the preschool age kids, the mothers and fathers had zero time to have sanity, I mean, it was like you constantly had to be watching where the kids were. You were worried that a stranger was going to talk to them or touch them. They were bored. There wasn't any, school type, stimulating activities for them. So the kids were really like where my heart was at, and these moms, these parents. But you can see that when it comes to school, more than half of all Utah children who are chronically absent for 2 years have chronic absenteeism drop out of high school. So it's missing 10% of the academic year for any reason. And you guys can see, right, that when you're homeless, it's really hard to not have chronic absenteeism. I mean, there at the shelter, the bus comes the very first. It picks those kids up before it picks up any other kids along the route. And we think, oh, that's so nice. So then other kids won't know that they're homeless. But I mean, when kids and people have been up all night crying, and you got a really horrible night's sleep, and the bus gets there and it's like 6:50 or 7 a.m. because they want to get those kids to get them to school early to get breakfast, and all you have is a Tupperware bin under your cot. That's the maximum amount of storage that they'll let you have. So you're trying to find that kid's missing Velcro shoe, and if you can't find it in time, does the bus wait for you? No. And do you have a car if the bus goes away? No. And can you walk that kid to school if the bus goes away? No. I mean, the school is located miles away from both the Midvale shelter and the downtown shelter. And just as an aside, these are not just Midvale and Salt Lake families. I mean, we have families from Provo. We have families from St. George. We have families from Draper and Orem and all the areas, because, as Karen said, all of these cities don't have shelters. So when they lose their housing, what happens? They find their way to Midvale or to Salt Lake. And then what happens? They've lost any community support they had before. So that great teacher who was really aware of little Mara and her artistic talents, and that, mom was working as a waitress and dad was working at the Banner sign wrap company, now she's gone. All of a sudden, she's just not showing up to school because they're downtown at the downtown shelter at Midvale. Now they have to transfer records. That takes a while. If Mara was getting an IEP, are you guys familiar with IEPs? So you know that maybe she needed some special interventions. That's going to take a while to transfer. So among the children in poverty, the absent rates are typically higher. And like we said, the stuff that contributes to them, housing, health, transportation, things that the kids face. Jen talked about this a little. I mean, you've got the PTSD and trauma, no transportation, frequent moves, no access to doctors or dentists, constant hunger, no access to clean clothes, summers where they're facing a big drought of not having childcare or other things that they need, and we can go into those in a little bit. But transportation is a massive one. So, I think that we look at the free fare zone that's downtown, and it's like, oh, that's so great. But for all of these families that live at the Midvale shelter, it's a half of a mile to get from the Midvale shelter door to the bus stop. And so every time they're riding the UTA, it is costing them, if they're taking the tracks, it's $5 per person per direction. And kids, I believe it's over the age of either 8 or 10, have to pay a fare. And so every time they're having to get on that, I mean, that is a massive amount of money out of their budget. You've got preschool. I mean, preschool is like, right? That is like the biggest deal. And I didn't realize it until I created this preschool for the Road Homes kids. And just tell me when I need to be done, because I could just like talk about this. Okay, so yeah, so we're there, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to create the world's best preschool for these kids, and I'm going to combine Joy School and Montessori and all the things that my kids had. Oh my gosh, dream on, you know? I mean, we were dealing with children who had never set foot in a preschool before. Some of them were 5 years old, they just missed the deadline, had just moved there, they were over 5, they just hadn't gotten into kindy yet. But we were dealing with some kids where I'm going, oh my gosh, and you know, these girlfriends of mine, these friends who were volunteering with me, it was a totally volunteer-run preschool, were like, there are some serious behavioral issues with these kids. And we're like, oh, these parents that aren't doing the right thing and teaching these kids how to behave. Well, we would bring in a little snack, as you do, like goldfish crackers or, you know, cheese snacks or whatever. And one day I'm like getting the cheese snacks ready, and, you know, we would cut them into tiny little pieces. I mean, it was just a little tiny snack. And I've got Mara, speaking of, that I mentioned before, this darling little girl, red hair, looks like strawberry shortcake, and she's following me around like a baby bird with her mouth open, and I just start like dropping cheese, you know, like into her mouth, and she's just following me and like will not stop, just, you know, is like hanging on me. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give her as much as she wants. I ended up getting a lot of cheese donated that day, and I just, you know, keep giving it to her. And snack time is over, and something really interesting happens. That Mara, who used to be kind of one of the naughty kids, was like having problems keeping her hands to herself and couldn't share, and was kind of hitting this other really cute little kiddo named Sadie, and they'd go like little battle bots go at each other. They like, it totally went away. And so what we realized, right, is these were not bad kids, they were hungry kids. These were children who were not getting the free and reduced price lunches that their older siblings were at the school, so they were going hungry. So, yeah, that makes a difference. I mean, who here is like fun to be around when they're hungry? Not me, you know. There is a lot of illness with kids who are homeless. You know, stuff that we would nip in the bud. You know, oh, kid's got an ear infection, run them over to the, you know, clinic down the street, get them on amoxicillin, 24 hours later, they're fine. When you're in the shelter, you don't have access to those pediatricians, to those clinics, and so what is your, what kind of care do you get? Emergency room. And how are you getting to the emergency room? You're calling the ambulance. So we would see over and over and over again these moms that would call the ambulance. Kiddo would have an ear infection because, of course, what kid has one from 8 to 5? No, they have them like at 1 in the morning. So, you know, he's got this raging fever, calls the ambulance, they take him up to Primary Children's, they give him amoxicillin, find out it's an ear infection. Well, they would go back to the shelter, and there was no refrigeration for a lot of the families. So this antibiotic that needed to be refrigerated then would go bad. And so then 2 days later, we start the cycle all over again. And so then these ear infections turn into more serious problems. And so a lot of it is preventative care that's needed, right? But if you are a kiddo who is having dental pain, and by the way, dental pain is the #1 cause for absenteeism for children in poverty in general. And, you know, because you think about it, if you don't have access to a dentist and you get a little cavity, well, again, with our kids, we just get them in there to, you know, Bird Pediatric, and they put them in a superhero costume and they get that thing all figured out. But that can cause them to lose their teeth. Because they haven't had access to refrigeration, these parents haven't had the ability to keep milk cold or fruits fresh. So we like to judge and go, oh, look at them feeding their kids that garbage. But if your only option to feed your baby who needs a bottle is the orange Tang or whatever that is that's in the grocery store, because it's the only thing that doesn't need to be refrigerated, well, then are we surprised that that baby develops bottle rot, and then all of her teeth are then falling out, and she's experiencing real dental pain, and we see this over and over again with the children in poverty. So they don't see a doctor, their IDs get stolen, they're constantly moving. Medicaid, it can be a little bit tricky, a little intimidating for them. Lack of transportation. Mental health is a massive issue. You know, the trauma associated with homelessness, with what they're witnessing in the shelter, with the insecurity of moving around like that, it's really, really hard on kids. The studies that have been done say that half of school-aged children experience anxiety, depression, or withdrawal compared to 18% of non-homeless children. So, you know, what chance do they have for succeeding on their own without our help if you've got half of them that are undiagnosed with those issues? By the time homeless kids are 8 years old, 1 in 3 has a major mental health disorder. And a lot of them, again, they don't know. You know, we don't know. So we judge them that, oh, you're just out of control, or you're this or you're that. But oftentimes it's an anxiety issue, or it's a trauma issue. We can see there that the stresses associated with homelessness do exist. There's, you know, stuff that we would not want kids to witness. It's not okay. And this is one where systemically we go, as a state, this isn't a Salt Lake problem, this is a state issue. What are we doing to provide spaces for these families that help to heal instead of re-traumatize? So that's something that we can look at on an ongoing basis. Learning disabilities, I mean, I hate to be a bummer and be like, because I will say that I've never met adults or children who were more impressive to me than those that are experiencing homelessness. I mean, I would tell these mothers, and I do tell them over and over again, that if you can do this, if you can navigate this system of trying to find that ID and trying to get your kid out the door to school, and there's no Wi-Fi at the shelter, and you have to apply for a job, and you've got to figure out a way to get on public transportation to go look for a cheap apartment and try to not look homeless so the landlord will actually want to rent to you, and do a load of wash, and you have to stay there so it doesn't get stolen, which means that you're at the laundromat for 3 hours with a toddler, and good luck trying to entertain a toddler for 3 hours at a laundromat. I mean, like, if you can do those things, you can be a CEO. Like, those are some serious skills. You know, and same with these children. If you can navigate this world and still have trust and like faith and hope that, you know, like, you can do anything. So I will say, this was an issue with East High School, that they decided to put in laundry room facilities and showers at the high school, because they found that one of the big reasons why the kids weren't coming to school is they didn't have access to clean clothes or to be able to shower. There was a 2-hour wait every morning for the shower at the shelter. So some really amazing moms and women like yourselves said, we're going to do something about this. And they got washers and dryers donated. They turned one of the old locker rooms into that. And now it's this amazing big program. And so, you know, we can do things at small levels, not just big levels, that really move the ball forward. Okay, so I will tell you, it is not like hopeless. These families are amazing. And there are some ideas, but I just want to let you guys know that it has really been the greatest gift that I've experienced, aside from raising my own kids, is having the opportunity to work with these families in poverty. And it just, like Jen said, and like, you know, Karen said, it's one person, just the baby step, and so we can all do a little. And I'd love to talk with you more, you know, if you guys want to get involved. Okay, and I'm gonna give this to her.
Thank you, Ashley, for your presentation. And thank you, Jen. I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking about what's out there right now in our community dealing to help with these issues. I know, Ashley, you're from Salt Lake, so you probably aren't as familiar with what we have here in Utah County as far as the homelessness. So I can tell you about, I can tell them, and Jen, I can tell you about what, if you want, I'll do this part. All right. What's going on in Utah County right now in addressing these issues? And then questions I am going to ask you after I get done to both of you is what can our communities do to address these issues of poverty and of homelessness? And I'm going to ask you as well, after we talk about that, how can, and I'm going to say someone in the audience, someone right now, what can they do right now to help with these issues? So let me tell you what's going on in Utah County right now. We have a variety of organizations who focus on helping move people out of poverty. Like I said before, we do not have a homeless shelter here in Utah County. I just want to clarify a definition of homelessness. HUD has a very Department of Housing and Urban Development has a very specific definition of what homelessness is and what chronic homelessness is. And so there are people who fall through those cracks. So if you know someone who's doubled up in somebody's home or couch surfing, or if they've moved back with their parents or with their cousins or their friends, they're not considered homeless. But in a way they are. There are all sorts of terms out there, homeless and precariously housed and things like that. In Utah County, we have a group called the Continuum of Care, and it's a group of social service agencies, and everyone from Community Action is there, our housing authorities, Habitat for Humanity, Wasatch Mental Health. We work together to come up with solutions from homelessness to home ownership. Right now, the rental market is just crazy expensive here in Utah County. And one of the things that I went to the homeless summit this last fall, and I don't have aha moments, I have duh moments, like duh. When somebody said, one thing we need to do in order to help solve and reduce the homelessness issue in our state is we need to house them. We need to have housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. And there just isn't housing available for that. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit on what homelessness might mean. The continuum of care, there's another subgroup of the continuum of care who know many of those who are chronically homeless, who are the ones on the street by name. We have a homeless, it's called HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. And so it's a master database. And so if they go to Wasatch Mental Health for services, the case manager can put notes in. And then if they come to Food and Care Coalition, who's also part of the continuum, they can have that information. If they come to Community Action, because we do provide rent and shelter assistance, we provide funds. The LDS Church gives us money every year to help individuals purchase IDs, because if you don't have an ID, you can't get a job, you can't rent, you can't. So the LDS Church funds that. The LDS Church also funds a lot of the emergency shelter program that we run as well. There's the Organization for Poverty People Helping People, geared mainly toward women single mothers who are looking to get back into the workforce. And what they work for is a job. They have mentors, and you work toward acquiring skills to where you can get a job that has benefits and that has upward mobility, rather than working in your $10 an hour job or $8 an hour job for the rest of your life. But you have that opportunity for growth. Another organization that we work with, as well as the Food and Care Coalition, they deal mainly with the homeless services. So people confuse Community Action Services and Food Bank, where I work, with Food and Care Coalition. Community Action's been around for 50 years, and we have the food pantry. So if you're going to take your food, we don't cook your food. That's why I just tell people, we don't cook your food. If you go to Food and Care, you're served a meal. They also have a mail drop there too. So individuals who need an address, because sometimes you've got to have an address, so you can go get that proof of residency or whatever. And so that gives you an opportunity for that as well. They also have transitional housing at Food and Care. Folks who are waiting, they're in like it says, transition until they can find housing that would be permanent for them. So there are a variety of organizations in the community who do that. If you go to mountainlandcoc.org, you can see and get more information about that. If you go to our website, communityactionuc.org, you will find out more about the Circles Initiative. You'll find out about Bridges Out of Poverty. That's one big tenet of our organization, is increasing what we call poverty IQ, poverty understanding economic class. So we partner with Jen in Arrive, Utah. They're housed in our building with us to teach the community, to make aware the community as to what's available. So I'm going to start with Jen and then go to Ashley. Is what can our communities do to address the issues of poverty and homelessness?
One thing, if you notice, when we talked about all these different issues that touch poverty, right? We talk about affordable housing, affordable living wages, transportation, children having access to food, clothing. There's so many pieces that can touch that doing any little bit that you feel like you can do helps. That's the best thing, is the reality. That last slide I showed you, all of us coming together can do something, helps. The other thing too is, after a while, when somebody needs help, it's really humbling. They try to hide it for a while. Maybe their friends and family can help them for a while, but you stop wanting to be the person that needs help, so you stop telling people, and so you start pulling away. And oftentimes we notice those who are struggling the most are very alone. So if you notice somebody in your neighborhood, how many of you have been to school, maybe to your church groups, to your neighborhood groups, your neighborhood, and you can kind of guess and notice, and you're like, well, they keep to themselves. Yeah, they do. But how awesome would that be if we reached out and they felt that they had a friend, that they had support, that they had somebody that wasn't judging them as much as loving them? You could all do that right now, today, and it makes a massive difference alone. And I'm not going to go into the other details, but similar to what Ashley said, right? See a need, let's come up with a solution. They don't have clean clothes, they don't have a way to do it. Laundry room at the high school. Who better than women to come up with creative solutions? We do this all the time, right? I don't know what I'm making for dinner. Let's put those things together. That works, right? We do this all the time, so we can see a need and we can be creative. We don't want to wait for services and others to figure it out. It's slow moving, and then they have to go ask people for money, and it moves on. But we could come together as a group and do amazing things so quickly. But if you felt something here and you think I can do something, go do it. And then tell us about it so we can brag about you to everybody else.
I would say that the legislators are really unaware of some of the needs that exist for these families. And it's not their fault, because the families don't get their ear, right? The families don't get to go up and lobby on the Hill, and they're not living next door to these families. They're not living next to the motel on North Temple, or, you know, the apartment complex off the freeway. So that's where you're needed to tell the stories of these families. So, you know, my parents live in Elkridge, and my mom was like, there's no one poor in Elkridge. And maybe she's right, but there are a lot of people that are in need in Payson, which is right next door. And, you know, we were talking about the needs that exist there, and their legislators, their representatives, who may or may not be aware of those needs. And my parents are friends with their legislators. And so for my parents to be able to go to their, you know, to this legislator and say, hey, here's a need that exists, that's really powerful. So that's something that you guys could do.
All right, so I have a question for both of you, back on what you were talking about, Ashley. If we want, let's say we're all fired up and you're ready to go out there and you're ready to talk to legislators and you want to tell stories, where can we get more information that we can take to elected officials and to those? So say we want to change housing law, we want to change the homeless to maybe look at some different options in housing those who are homeless. How can we work on the barriers that keep people in poverty?
Yeah. So I think that the groups that you're already in are awesome vehicles for making change. If you're connected to your local PTA, if you're connected to your local church organization, just say, you know what, I'm interested in childhood poverty. I'm interested in, intergenerational poverty, homelessness, whatever it is. And then I love the model of circles. This is what I got involved with. I was able to bring this to Salt Lake because of Jen, and it's been such a gift for these families that have been cycling in and out of homelessness for years to go, you know what, we're going to wrap our arms around you and we're going to pair you with intentional friends that are going to stick with you until you get out of poverty long term, and we're going to help you, connect you to resources. So there are circles organizations throughout the state. That is such an excellent way to get involved and get to know one individual who becomes your friend. So then it's not just going to your legislators or your PTA group like, oh, there's poor people, we should help them. It's like, no, there's this woman named Alexandra, and she has these 2 darling daughters, and when I saw her last week, the bus doesn't go to her work. It stops, 3 blocks short, and when there's snow, she's got a stroller, and we got to go to UTA and say, you got to extend that bus route, It's like real tangible needs attached to a real tangible human. So that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Jen, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, just real quick, for those in the room, we have brochures and flyers up here about Circles and Arrive Utah, so you can get in contact with us if you need to. The one thing I would say is oftentimes we might, I did say see a need and go fix it, but talk to the individuals first and say what might be useful to you if you're not familiar. Because oftentimes, so you could look at me, Jen, here, and say, wow, 25 things I know you need. One, probably better microphone skills, right? So you could tell me that and have classes for me, but I might not be able to handle all that good stuff you have ready for me. But I want to fix, there might be something right now that if you asked me, I'd be like, it'd be awesome if this got solved. It's amazing if we listen, how we could actually solve the things that would make the biggest difference.
All right, thank you. That's one thing I wanted, before I come around and open it up for questions, I wanted to emphasize, what was that? Are we done? We're almost done. And so before people, when I've worked with individuals, I come from the middle class, and viewing those in poverty, those who are homeless, sometimes we view them as being broken. I loved what Ashley talked about. If they can manage this and they can manage that, I watched this gentleman today very meticulously take things out of these containers and strap them with the straps. And I walked up to him and I said, you should be an engineer, because the way that he had this structure set up that he could put on that hand truck, it was amazing. And he laughs, and then we started visiting. But those individuals, they're people like us, just like us. They have the same needs, the same hopes and dreams for their children as we do. And I hope tonight you've had the opportunity to learn more about what it is that you can do and learn more about what poverty and homelessness look like here in Utah County and in the state. Do any of you have questions that you'd like to ask? Yes, they're recording it, so go ahead and put it in the microphone.
I would like to have some advice on the best way to help a panhandler. I'm often nervous about giving them cash.
That's a great question. In fact, when I was driving down here, I got off at like the 8th North exit and I drove along State, and I'm like, yep, this does not look like the State Street in Salt Lake. You do not see as many panhandlers, and it is a tricky situation, and I've gone back and forth. So I personally don't turn away a mother or someone with children. If I see somebody, they call it flying a sign. Often it means that they are desperate, that they are doing it to get diapers, to get formula. If I see a single gentleman, is this? No. Oh, you're so good. Then I, as a woman, will often just say, "I'm sorry, I can't," because mental health is a serious issue for some individuals experiencing homelessness. Self-medication, what we often call addiction, can go hand in hand with that. And I don't want to put myself in a position that's dangerous, and I don't want to put them in a precarious situation where I might say something that could trigger them or offend them. You know, if I have a spare dollar and it's just loose on me, I'll just hand it. But if I've got to like dig into my wallet and get it, I'll just kind of go, no thanks, you know, or I can't. But what I do keep in my car is I keep Ziploc bags with stuff in them, with a Maverick gift card or with feminine hygiene supplies or hand sanitizer or things like that that I can give out as well. And so, you know, I look to organizations like Crossroads Urban Center, like 4th Street Clinic, like Circles, to support them on an ongoing basis to help these, you know, individuals, and then just kind of take it case by case a little bit. Hopefully that helps.
And we at Community Action help the individuals as well. And to answer what my feeling, it goes along with what Ashley was saying, is follow your gut. There are times when I do give money, and other times I don't. And I just have to, you just have to, I mean, sometimes it's a tough, well, I wish it were an easy answer, but it can be difficult. Jen, did you want to? Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? Yes.
So I had an individual come and approach me and need help, and I really did believe his story and thought he was genuinely in need of help. But I do believe that he was here illegally, and I didn't know where to send him and what happens in that situation if these services are open to all, and in that particular situation.
At Community Action, we have a variety of services, and food, for example, one does not have to be documented to get food. And I say, we've got the expert right there. Jamal is one of our wonderful interns who spends time every day he's in the office. That's what he does. He does the Jamal visits with clients. And so tell me if I'm going amiss, okay? So we will generally, what we do at Community Action is someone comes in and needs food, we'll give them food the first visit. We don't ask necessarily, they don't need to have documentation, it's my understanding of the first time, but we ask them as far as income verification because our funding sources require that. But we do not require immigration documents for food. There are some of our funders require at least one person in the household be documented for housing. I don't know. Do you work in? Forgive me. You do food intake.
I do both.
You do both. So let me give this to Jamal here. I'm gonna put Jamal on the spot. So I can tell you what, it's right here in Utah County.
Okay. So sorry, I was listening to Karen. So what was your question?
Just what services are available for people who may not be documented?
Yeah. I mean, Karen kind of covered this, but food services, I mean, initially, if someone comes in and they're undocumented, generally speaking, we give them food. And then following the next visit into Community Action, we'll ask them, you know, do you have documentation in terms of ID, or we just need something with a picture on it. And so in terms of how, kind of on a long-term basis, it's mainly getting people to, in terms of the sustainability. So I'm not sure if that makes sense or not, but yeah.
How about housing? Do they get housing or do they documented?
That's a good question. So, sorry, I did not prepare.
I'm sorry, I put Jamal on. I mean, I can give it a shot.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. That's what I said. My understanding is that at least one person in the household has to be documented in order to receive the HUD funding. So that's, if you go to our website, there'll be information there as well, communityactionuc.org. And Jamal, thank you for being a sport on that. Okay, Jen.
I also want to add, I don't know if they can always answer about the documentation, but 211, you all know 211, right? If you know 911, you want to know 211. That's services. You can call at any time 211 and say, who does housing? Who does food? If you find somebody or you have a neighbor in need that needs something, you don't have the answer, call 211 and ask, and they can help direct you. It's not always the perfect answer maybe, but it's really good and it's fast, right? So
And there's an
keep that
app.
in mind. And there is an app.
Utah 211 app, and you can put in, I need housing. So, yes, one more question, and then we need to get you over to the refreshments.
How many of these services are available in Spanish, or do you have on-call interpreters to help out?
At Community Action, we actually have 2 full-time employees who speak Spanish and 1 part-time employee. And so there's usually somebody there who can speak Spanish and interpret when needed.
Is the, like the 2-in-1, is that also available? Do they have?
I don't know if I'm not sure. She asked if 211 has Spanish services. Do they? Oh, okay. So they do. Yes. All right. That was the next to last question. Here's the last question.
Okay, what about a person that works full-time and maybe only has an hour or 2 a week that they could do something? What do you recommend?
Yes, we love you people. I would say circles. I know I'm biased. I know I'm going to just sound like, I'm beating a dead horse here, but really the great thing is that people can say, I either want to get matched on an ongoing basis, kind of like the refugee mentorship program where I get to, develop that over the long haul, or you can come in and just play with the kids on a one-time basis or bring a meal on a one-time basis or volunteer to help set up. But again, it's a really authentic way to get to know these families and to, have that interaction instead of just dropping food off at the food bank. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because we need that too. We need all the things. But if you've just got the hour, I think that that's super valuable. Is there anything else?
We have 3 sites in Utah County. We have one in South County in Salem, one in Provo, and one in American Fork, who meet weekly with dinner and childcare. If you go to our website, communityactionuc.org, and look for circles, and it has the volunteer opportunities there. We also have Kathy and Margie. You want to raise your hands? They work with the Circles initiative here in Utah County, and if you want to talk to them after, they can also give you information as well. All right, thank you so much, and turn it back over to Amber.
What a powerful message. Thank you so much, each of you. We do have these little gifts to say thanks, but thank you so much. It was super informative. I hope you all feel the same way and at least learned about 211, if anything. It was great.